What if I told you that right now, today, you could buy a house in the United States of America for less than $9,000? Not a storage unit, not a trailer, a house, with a porch, with land, with trees older than your grandparents surrounding it on every side. Most people see that price and feel something electric, like they just found a secret the rest of the country missed. But here is what nobody tells you. That $9,000 house sits in a county where the nearest hospital is an hour away, where the roads turn to mud in the rain, where entire towns have been slowly emptying out for 50 years, and where the people who grew up there, who love that land more than anything, could not afford to stay. So before you call your realtor, you need to understand exactly what you are actually buying. These are the cheapest places to buy a house in the Ozarks, and the brutal truth behind every single price tag. Number 15, Jasper, Arkansas. Start with a county that has no traffic lights. Not one. In the entire county. Newton County, Arkansas covers over 800 square miles of ridge, hollow, creek bottom, and national forest. About 7,600 people live there. Jasper is the county seat, population around 500, sitting in a valley surrounded by Ozark ridges that burn orange and red every October like something out of a painting. The Buffalo River runs through the county, one of the first rivers in the United States to receive federal protection as a national river. Whitaker Point, a sandstone overlook jutting out over a sea of treetops, has been photographed so many times it has become a social media landmark. The hiking trails here draw people from across the country. You can buy property near Jasper for $10,000 to $25,000. The reason it stays cheap despite all that natural beauty is simple. Geography is working against you in every direction at once. The same steep wooded terrain that makes it spectacular makes it nearly impossible to develop. Roads are narrow, winding, and in winter they become essentially optional. Emergency response times stretch past 45 minutes in many parts of the county. The nearest hospital is in Harrison, 30 miles away on mountain roads that do not care about your timeline. Newton County has no industrial base, no commercial agriculture. The tourist economy is growing, but not fast enough to sustain families year-round. The cheapest properties sit in remote hollows on roads that are really more like suggestions carved into hillsides. The view is free. Everything else costs more than it looks. Number 14, Eminence, Missouri. Shannon County sits in south-central Missouri and consistently appears near the top of lists you do not want to be on. Most economically distressed counties in Missouri. Highest poverty rates. Lowest median incomes. Eminence is the county seat. Population around 500. It sits at the meeting point of the Current River and Jack's Fork River, two of the clearest, coldest, most beautiful waterways in the entire Midwest. The Ozark National Scenic Riverways runs right through town. On a summer weekend, the place fills with canoeists and kayakers and families floating downstream on inner tubes. Houses go for $6,000 to $18,000. What the tourism brochures skip over is the other 11 months. When the floaters go home and the season closes, Eminence goes quiet in a way that feels less peaceful than hollow. There is no major employer. Young people who grow up here face a straightforward calculation: there is nothing to stay for, and most of them make the only logical choice. The county also carries a problem that comes with poverty and distance. Illegal dumping. When trash service costs money you do not have and the nearest landfill requires a long drive, garbage ends up in creek beds and hollows and tree lines. Some of those $6,000 properties come with a permanent neighbor, a rusted car chassis, a pile of old tires, a washing machine nobody ever came back for. Number 13, Mountain View, Arkansas. This one surprises people. Mountain View calls itself the folk music capital of the world, and that is not entirely an exaggeration. The Ozark Folk Center State Park is here, a living museum of traditional culture where craftspeople demonstrate blacksmithing, basket weaving, and quilting. On any given weekend in summer, you can stand in the courthouse square and hear banjos and fiddles drifting through warm evening air. It is genuinely beautiful, genuinely charming, and genuinely poor. Stone County has a poverty rate above 22%. Properties in Mountain View run $12,000 to $28,000. The tourism keeps a handful of shops and restaurants alive but does not create broad employment. The town's identity, built deliberately around preserving traditional ways, creates a tension with economic development that never fully resolves. Every proposal for new industry gets weighed against whether it will change the character of the place. That question is worth asking. But when the answer is always no, it becomes a quiet veto on the very change that might let young people stay. The result is a town that is culturally rich and economically frozen. The music is beautiful. The poverty underneath it is not. Number 12, Gainesville, Missouri. County seat of Ozark County, population around 600. One of the smallest county seats in all of Missouri, which is itself a detail that tells you something. Ozark County has a poverty rate that has exceeded 30% in recent surveys. Properties go from $5,000 to $15,000. The low end of that range describes structures that a building inspector would approach with a flashlight and a look of increasing concern. The nearest city of any real size is Springfield, about 100 miles north, nearly 2 hours on two-lane roads shared with logging trucks and farm equipment. No public transportation exists. If your car breaks down in Gainesville, you negotiate with whoever you know who owes you a favor. There is a particular silence to county seats this small. The courthouse still opens. The flags still fly. The official functions of government technically continue. But the ecosystem that was supposed to grow up around that courthouse, the lawyers, the restaurants, the people moving through on business, that ecosystem collapsed a long time ago. What remains is the skeleton of a functioning town, still going through the motions. Number 11, Noel, Missouri. Here is a town with a story that sounds invented. Noel sits in McDonald County in the very southwestern corner of Missouri, right where the state meets Arkansas and Oklahoma. Population around 1,900. And every December, the post office here processes thousands of pieces of holiday mail from people across the country who want a Noel, Missouri postmark on their Christmas cards. The Christmas City, a real tradition, generations old. McDonald County has a median household income below $30,000 and a poverty rate near 25%. The economy runs on poultry processing, chicken plants that provide steady work at the cost of hard physical labor, repetitive injuries, and wages that hover just above survival. Properties go for $8,000 to $16,000. There is also an environmental concern worth knowing. The karst limestone geology under the Ozarks is full of sinkholes and underground channels. Waste from poultry operations can seep into that geology and travel in directions nobody predicted. The Illinois River has been the subject of legal battles between states over phosphorus pollution flowing downstream from poultry farms upstream. If you buy a house in Noel and drink from a well, test that water. Test it every single year. Number 10, Gassville, Arkansas. First entry on this list with a genuine advantage, it sits close enough to Mountain Home to borrow some of its services. A real hospital. Chain retail. A job market that at least technically exists. That proximity makes Gassville better positioned than most places on this list, which still puts it well behind almost anywhere else in the country. Properties range from $12,000 to $22,000. The cheaper ones sit in FEMA flood zones along the White River, which means flood insurance is not optional and is not cheap. A house that costs $15,000 but demands $2,500 a year in mandatory flood insurance looks very different after 5 years. When the White River rises, it does not rise politely. It moves fast. It carries debris. It does not give you much warning. What the river takes, it tends to keep. Number 9, Yellville, Arkansas. County seat of Marion County. Population around 1,200. Named after Archibald Yell, governor of Arkansas, congressman, and a man who died at the Battle of Buena Vista in 1847 during the Mexican-American War. A small town carrying the name of someone who died young and far from home. Make of that what you will. Properties run $10,000 to $25,000. For a county seat with a functioning courthouse and basic services, that is remarkable. The reason prices stay low is the same story repeated across this entire region: limited employment, declining population, aging demographics, and isolation that makes commuting impractical. For families with children, the school situation is usually the final deal-breaker. You can live with a long drive to the doctor. You can adapt to slow internet. What is harder to accept is knowing your children's education is being shaped by a system that cannot afford to compete with schools in larger districts. Number 8, Theodosia, Missouri. The name sounds like it belongs to a Victorian novel. And in some ways, Theodosia has that quality: elegant bones, faded grace, a story mostly written in the past tense. It tucks into a bend of Bull Shoals Lake on the Missouri side. Population around 200. In summer, the fishing boats come out and the weekenders arrive and the lake sparkles. Waterfront lots here are a fraction of what similar property costs almost anywhere else in the country. But Bull Shoals is an Army Corps of Engineers reservoir. That means the water level is not yours to negotiate. The Corps manages the dam based on rainfall, flood control, and hydroelectric needs. That beautiful lakefront lot can sit 100 feet from the water in spring and a quarter mile from the water in fall. Your dock might be submerged or sitting in dry cracked mud depending on decisions made in an office you will never visit. Ozark County roads wash out after heavy rain. Ice makes the hills dangerous in winter. Some days, staying home is not a preference, it is the only option available. Number 7, Caulfield, Missouri. There is a reasonable chance you have never heard of Caulfield. That is exactly the point. Howell County. Population a few hundred. Properties go for $4,000 to $9,000. $4,000 for a house in the United States of America. You could put that on a credit card and pay it off before summer. What $4,000 buys you in Caulfield is often a structure that has been empty long enough for nature to start reclaiming it. Soft floorboards. Missing windows. Vegetation pushing through the foundation. And in the attic, almost certainly, raccoons. Raccoons are the most common permanent residents of abandoned Ozark homes. They do not pay rent. They do cause an astonishing amount of damage to drywall and insulation. The deeper problem is the tax death spiral. When property values drop to $4,000, property tax revenue drops with them. No revenue means no money for roads, schools, or emergency services. Deteriorating services drive out remaining residents. Fewer residents mean even less revenue. There is no natural floor to this cycle. It simply keeps descending. Number 6, Calico Rock, Arkansas. This one has real bones worth examining. Calico Rock sits on limestone bluffs above the White River in Ozark County. Population around 1,000. The colorful bluffs gave the town its name, and the small historic downtown looks genuinely like something from the 1920s, not a reconstruction, not a theme park version, but the actual buildings from a century ago still standing because nobody had the money to tear them down and replace them with something worse. Properties run $10,000 to $18,000. The historic ones have real architectural character. The problem is that historic in this context means something specific. Lead paint in layers you cannot see. Asbestos insulation behind walls you have not opened. Plumbing last updated when Eisenhower was president. Electrical wiring that most insurance companies will not cover because the fire risk is not theoretical. Ozark County has a poverty rate above 20%. White River trout fishing is seasonal and does not pay January bills. What remains is a beautiful town with a real history and a housing stock that will cost you 4 times the purchase price before it is genuinely safe to live in. Number 5, Lead Hill, Arkansas. Population around 300. Boone County. Perched above Bull Shoals Lake with views that, in a different geography, would cost you 40 times the asking price. The bass fishing reputation is real. Bull Shoals is legitimately one of the better fishing destinations in the country, and summer tourism keeps a handful of local businesses alive. Houses start at $7,000. But Lead Hill has no municipal water. No sewer system. You are on a well and a septic, both of which cost money to maintain and both of which can fail without warning. Wells go dry in drought years. Septic systems fail when the soil does not drain, which in Ozark clay and limestone is less a possibility than an inevitability at some point. The larger Harrison area, 30 miles away and the nearest real hospital, carries a documented history of racial hostility that the community has worked hard to address but has not fully escaped in public perception. That reputation alone has turned away potential residents who might otherwise have come. In real estate, perception does not negotiate. Number 4, Leslie, Arkansas. County seat of Searcy County. Population around 400. One of the smallest county seats in Arkansas and one of the least populated counties in the state, 7,800 people across 668 square miles. Properties range from $6,000 to $20,000. The lower end comes with land, sometimes several acres, and the disorienting feeling of owning more earth than you have ever been responsible for in your life. The Buffalo National River is nearby. The Ozark National Forest surrounds the area like a green wall. On a clear October day, standing on any ridge in Searcy County, you understand completely why people stayed through every economic disaster, every population decline, every year when leaving made more practical sense than staying. The nearest Walmart is over 40 miles away. In rural America, that distance is not just inconvenient, it is a signal. It tells you everything about every other service, employer, and amenity that a community needs to sustain modern life. Number 3, Mammoth Spring, Arkansas. A place with a genuine natural wonder, and almost nothing surrounding it. The spring that named this town pumps roughly 9 million gallons of water per day out of the limestone bedrock. One of the largest natural springs in the United States. Standing over it and watching that volume of cold clear water push up through the earth like the land itself is breathing, it is one of those things that stops you mid-thought. People settled here because the railroad came. The Frisco line made Mammoth Spring a real hub for a period, hotels, commerce, movement. Then the railroad left, the way railroads always leave small towns, and the long unwinding began. Houses go for $8,000 to $15,000. Many of the older ones are railroad-era homes with genuine character and also, in many cases, lead paint, asbestos insulation, and electrical systems installed before building codes were a concept anyone took seriously. Fulton County has a poverty rate above 25%. And the karst geology that produces the beautiful spring also creates a specific hazard. Underground limestone channels mean septic systems can fail in ways that contaminate groundwater rather than just backing up into a yard. A failing septic system in karst terrain is a public health problem, not just a property inconvenience. Number 2, Dora, Missouri. Dora is not technically a town. It is an unincorporated community in Ozark County, no mayor, no city council, no municipal water, no local government above the county level. A collection of houses, a post office, a church, sitting in wooded hills with no formal structure holding it together. Properties go for $5,000 to $10,000. Some sit on rolling land with creek frontage and old hardwood timber. Described without context, they sound extraordinary. The nearest hospital is over an hour away. Many roads are unpaved and become impassable in rain and ice. Emergency response in Ozark County routinely exceeds 45 minutes and stretches further in bad weather. There are no streetlights. No sidewalks. Some days, the mail carrier is the only person you see. There is a difference between choosing solitude and having it imposed on you by geography and economics. Dora does not offer the former. It delivers the latter, at $5,000, cash preferred, no contingencies. Number 1, Thayer, Missouri. This is the one that holds the whole story together. Thayer sits right on the Arkansas border in Oregon County. Population around 2,300, and that number has been slipping for years. Oregon County has a median household income hovering near $27,000, roughly half the national median. The county has been hit hard by methamphetamine for over 2 decades. Not as a statistic. As a lived reality that has torn families apart, overwhelmed the justice system, and created cycles of addiction and poverty that do not resolve without serious intervention. You can find houses in and around Thayer for $7,000 to $12,000. Some are move-in ready by the loosest possible definition. Others need a roof, new plumbing, updated wiring, and a foundation assessment before you could safely spend a night inside. That $8,000 house becomes a $40,000 project before it is actually livable. The town has the basics. A small hospital. A couple of grocery stores. A Dollar General, because every small town in America has a Dollar General. What Thayer does not have is industry. The timber and railroad jobs that built this community vanished decades ago and nothing came along to replace them. Young people grow up here, look at their options, do the math, and leave. Not because they hate the place. Many of them love it. But love does not pay the electric bill. And when the only work available is minimum wage retail or seasonal farm labor, you either leave or you accept a life that grinds you down slowly until you cannot leave anymore. Thayer is the fullest version of this story. Beautiful. Affordable. And carrying the entire weight of every structural failure that produces $8,000 houses in the first place. Here is the truth nobody wants to say out loud. These houses are not cheap because the land is worthless. They are cheap because the economy abandoned the people living on it. Every $8,000 price tag is not a bargain. It is a number that tells you exactly how much a community has been left behind. The Ozarks are gorgeous. The people are some of the most resilient, resourceful, and generous in this country. And the silence out there is so deep you can hear your own thoughts for the first time in years. But that silence also means no hospital nearby. No jobs. No easy path forward for the next generation, unless something changes. What they need is not buyers looking for a cheap flip. They need investment, infrastructure, and the recognition that rural America is not a punchline or a museum exhibit. It is a part of this country that matters. And the fact that you can buy a house there for less than a used car is not a fun real estate fact. It is a national problem we have all agreed to ignore. So tell me, would you buy a house for $9,000 and take everything that comes with it? Or is some things too cheap for a reason? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you know someone who actually made this move and stayed, I want to hear that story more than any other.